What would you do if your wife stole your son, emptied your life savings, and left you to die? My name is Jack Calder. Amanda cheated, drained $500,000, took Lucas, and vanished. Hours later, a storm tore the ocean open, and I woke up on a nameless island with blood in my mouth and nothing else. Through the rain, I saw the rescue boat. On it stood Brian Walsh, my best friend. He met my eyes, then turned away. I survived 6 months like a ghost, on coconuts, raw fish, and rage. And when I came back, I didn't swing first. I followed the truth. If you want to see Thermo-Nuclear, legal revenge, drop a comment, subscribe, and stay with me. This only gets darker. Before the island, my life was simple in the most American way. Work, traffic, bills, repeat. I managed operations for a mid-sized company. Nothing glamorous, just steady. I wore responsibility like a second skin because that's what a man does when he's got a family depending on him. I wasn't chasing luxury. I was chasing peace. A paid mortgage, a clean name, a kid who slept safe at night. Lucas was the center of it. My boy would sprint to the door yelling, "Dad," like I was the answer to something. And every time he did, it reminded me why I stayed calm, why I didn't drink too much, why I showed up. Amanda fit the picture perfectly. Soft voice, warm smile, the kind of wife who'd touch your shoulder and say, "Let me handle the money, Jack. You carry enough." It felt like teamwork. It felt like love. Brian Walsh was the extra brick in my foundation, my best friend. Years of history, barbecues, inside jokes. He called Lucas "little man." And here's the part that still makes me sick. I trusted them because I wanted my house quiet. Then one Tuesday night, Amanda slid a document across the table and said, "Just sign this. Routine." Brian was sitting right there, nodding like it was nothing. After that routine signature, Brian started showing up more often. Always casual, always helpful. He'd bring beer, roughhouse with Lucas, fix a squeaky hinge like he belonged in my home. Lucas loved him, and that lowered my guard faster than any smile Amanda could fake. Amanda and Brian kept drifting into little private huddles. Kitchen corner, patio step, the end of the hallway. Voices dropping into that soft, serious tone people use when they don't want you to hear. When I'd walk in, they'd stop like someone hit pause. Amanda would turn, bright-eyed, and say, "We're just talking about boring stuff." Brian would laugh and clap my shoulder. "Man stuff, money stuff, don't sweat it." I tried to be the steady one, the reasonable husband, the guy who doesn't accuse without proof. So when I got kicked out of our bank app, password changed, I swallowed it. Amanda didn't even look up. "It's for safety. Everyone's getting hacked." Brian took a slow sip and said, almost offhand, "If I were you, Jack, I wouldn't let anyone hold my money." That night, I asked Amanda for the new password. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "In the morning." In the morning, my phone buzzed with a bank alert, a transfer pending, and when I turned the screen toward her, Amanda's face didn't flicker. Not fear, not surprise, just calm. And that calm is what scared me most. That bank alert from the night before didn't stop. It multiplied, little pings that vanished the second I tapped them, like my money was learning how to hide. 100 here, 250 there, then a larger transfer pending that sat in my chest like a stone. When I asked Amanda, she didn't get defensive. She didn't even blink. She just gave me that soft, tired wife look and said, "Don't worry, I've got it. You're stressed enough." And I wanted to believe her, because believing her meant I could go back to being the guy who fixes problems, not the guy who suspects his own home. Work kept me moving. Long days, late calls. I told myself I'd dig into it on the weekend. But the weekend came, and Brian was at my kitchen table with a folder like he owned the place. "Restructuring," he said. "Just cleaning things up, protecting you." I skimmed words I didn't fully understand. Amanda stood behind me, hands on my shoulders, warm and steady. "Sign," she whispered. "It's routine." So I signed, trying to keep the peace, like I was handing them the knife and thanking them for holding it. And a week later, Amanda said we needed a vacation. Amanda pitched it like medicine. "A reset," she said. "Just us. No work, no fighting. We need to breathe again, Jack." She said it with that calm voice that made it sound like I was the one poisoning the room. And maybe I was. Suspicion has a smell. It leaks out of you even when you try to keep it polite. Lucas overheard and lit up instantly. "A trip?" he asked, eyes wide, already picturing sunshine and ice cream. That's how they get you, through your kid, through the part of you that will sacrifice anything to see him happy. Brian was suddenly full of solutions. "I've got a guy," he said. "Boat charter, resort, the whole deal. South Pacific. It'll do you good." He said it like a brother, like he was saving my marriage. Amanda was almost peaceful about it. Too peaceful. Like she already knew the ending and was just walking me to it. I told myself a change of scenery could fix what money and stress had cracked. I told myself this was me fighting for my family. Then, the night we finalized everything, Amanda looked at me across the table and asked, quiet, serious, rehearsed, "If something happens out there, you'll keep Lucas safe, right?" And the way Brian went silent made my skin go cold. The ocean was so blue it almost felt fake, like a postcard someone was trying too hard to sell me. Lucas leaned over the rail, laughing every time the boat lifted and dropped, and I forced myself to match his smile. I kept telling myself this was what a good dad does. Show up, stay steady, make the world feel safe. Amanda was different. She didn't relax. She kept snapping photos. Lucas, the horizon, my hands on the rail, over and over, like she was building a file, not a memory. When I asked, she smiled and said, "I just want to remember this." Brian wasn't on our boat. That should have been the loudest thing in the world. His excuse came through a quick call, something about logistics, meeting us later, words that sounded smooth but didn't land. Then the sky shifted, not slowly, like someone flipped a switch. The wind sharpened, cold and sudden, and the captain's face tightened. He told everyone to put on life vests, right now, no arguments. I pulled Lucas close, his little vest squeaking under my grip, and a thought hit me so hard I almost tasted it. I'm about to lose everything. The first wave didn't feel like water. It felt like a hand, shoving the boat sideways, stealing everyone's balance at once. People screamed. Rain came down in sheets so thick it erased the horizon. The engine whined like it was begging to quit. I grabbed Lucas, then lost him for half a second in the chaos of bodies and slick plastic. Half a second is nothing, until it's your kid. I shoved through elbows and panic, calling his name loud enough to tear my throat. "Lucas!" The boat pitched again. Something cracked. Someone fell. I saw Amanda gripping the rail with both hands, white-knuckled, eyes forward, locked on survival like she was alone. She never yelled my name, not once. Lightning flashed and the sea lit up in a violent, cold snapshot. Off to the side, I saw it. Another set of lights out in the storm. Another boat. Close enough to matter. Lucas cried out, sharp and small, and then the next wave swallowed the sound like it never existed. I lunged toward him, and in that moment, the rain thinned just enough for me to see a silhouette on the other boat. A man watching. Not helping. Watching. The lightning hit again and the rain thinned for a heartbeat, just long enough for the world to show me the truth. It was Brian, not a stranger, not some random guy on a rescue boat. Brian Walsh, my best friend. The man who'd eaten at my table, slapped my shoulder, called my son little man, like he meant it. He was standing there steady, dry enough to look comfortable, like he'd been waiting for this moment. Our eyes met. 2 seconds, maybe less, but it felt like a full conversation. "Help me. You know me. That's my kid." Brian didn't wave. He didn't shout. He didn't move. He just turned his head away, slow, deliberate, like I wasn't worth the trouble. And then I saw Amanda. She was on that boat too. Her hand locked around Lucas's wrist, pulling him close. Her other hand found Brian's, fingers threading together like they'd done it 1,000 times. In the middle of the storm, they looked calm, chosen, together. A wave slammed into me from the side. The ocean grabbed my legs and ripped me backward. The last thing I heard was Lucas crying, "Dad!" And then the sea swallowed everything. I came back to life on sand. That's the first thing I remember. Grit on my tongue, salt in my throat, and the taste of blood like a copper penny I couldn't spit out. My body felt wrong, heavy and hollow at the same time. When I tried to sit up, the world tilted and the sky spun bright and cruel. My pockets were empty. No phone, no radio, no flare, no anything. I stumbled to the shoreline and scanned the water like my eyes could pull a boat out of it. Nothing. Just waves rolling in with the same indifferent rhythm, like the ocean had already moved on. "Lucas!" I screamed until my voice broke. No answer. I ran the beach on shaking legs, tripping over driftwood and torn scraps, pieces of a life that had been ripped apart and tossed back at me. I found a shredded life vest, a chunk of plastic, a strap that could have been from our boat. But I didn't find my son. Behind the beach was low jungle, thick and quiet. No buildings, no footprints, no smoke, no sound but wind and water. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a place people visit. This was where things disappear. I dropped to my knees and stared at the horizon. "Please," I whispered to the ocean. And the ocean didn't answer. After I begged the ocean and got nothing back, my body made the decision for me. My mouth was sandpaper. My tongue felt too big for my teeth. I'd thought hunger would be the first problem. Turns out thirst shows up like a debt collector. Quiet, fast, and mean. I walked the island with my lips split and my head pounding, looking for anything that didn't taste like salt. No stream, no spring, just heat pressing down like a hand on the back of my neck. I tried to wring moisture out of leaves like some idiot in a survival show. I got nothing but green bitterness, so I went after coconuts. I smashed my knuckles on rock until I learned the angle that didn't punish me. When the shell finally cracked, I drank like a man who'd been crawling through a desert, because I had. The water was warm and slightly sour, and I didn't care. My stomach cramped, my throat burned, and I kept going. By midday, my skin felt cooked. My lips bled every time I spoke Lucas's name. That's when I set my first rule. Simple enough to survive, hard enough to hate. Live first, hurt later. And I drank like I was dying, because I was. At the time, I thought thirst would kill me first. I was wrong. Something else on that island was already working on me. Once I could think straight again, the next problem was the sun, then the night. In the daylight, the island tried to roast me. After dark, it tried to swallow me. I built a shelter the way a tired man does everything. Ugly, fast, and desperate. Palm fronds, driftwood, a crooked frame that barely held. The leaves cut my hands like paper. Salt got into every little tear and made sure I felt it. Fire was worse. I tried sticks, friction, anything I'd ever seen on TV. My arms shook. My patience snapped. Every failed spark felt like the island laughing at me. Finally, I found dry fiber tucked under fallen bark, nursed a tiny ember like it was a newborn, and blew until my lungs hurt. When the flame caught, it wasn't warmth I felt first. It was relief. Then night came. The jungle didn't go quiet. It got louder. Insects whining, branches snapping, things moving that I couldn't see. My brain filled in monsters where there were probably just lizards. I held a sharp piece of shell in my fist like it could save me. I talked to the darkness just to hear a human voice. I didn't sleep that first night. I watched. I listened. Mostly, I guarded myself, because loneliness makes a man dangerous in ways he doesn't expect. That night, alone in the dark, I realized something worse than hunger or fear. A man alone long enough starts thinking thoughts he can't take back. The morning after that first sleepless night, hunger showed up like an insult. Not dramatic, just a steady ache that made everything feel slower. I'd had coconut water, sure, but it wasn't food, it was a delay. So I made a spear. Driftwood sharpened on rock until it looked more like a threat than a tool. I waded into the shallows, feet slipping on algae-slick stone, and waited. The water was clear enough to tease me, fish flashing silver, always just out of reach. When I finally struck one, it wasn't clean. The fish thrashed, my hands shook, and I felt stupid for struggling with something that small. But I won. Survival doesn't care if you look dignified. I tried to eat it raw at first. The taste hit like a slap. Metallic, warm, wrong. I gagged, spit, then forced it down anyway. Later, I figured out fire. Cooked fish was better for about 2 meals. Then the smell started living in my hair, my clothes, my skin, burnt scales, oily smoke, that same sour note day after day. By the end of the week, fish wasn't food anymore. It was trauma with bones. I lived on fish, and I started to hate it. By the end of that week, fish wasn't keeping me alive. It was teaching me how much a man can hate the thing he depends on. Once I could keep myself alive, the next problem was time. Time stretches on an island. It doesn't move forward. It piles up on your chest. I found a flat piece of driftwood and started carving marks into it. One line for each sunrise. Day 1, Day 2, Day 3. It gave me something to hold on to, like the world still had rules, like numbers could keep me sane. Some days I'd climb the highest rock and stare at the horizon until my eyes burned. The sun would hit the water just right and I'd swear I saw a boat, white shape, hard edge, then the wind would shift and it would melt into cloud. Every time it happened, hope rose up and died in the same breath. Anger started hot, loud in my head. Amanda, Brian, that calm face, that turned back. But anger doesn't last when you're alone. It cools, it sharpens. It becomes something quieter and more dangerous. I carved another line, pressed my thumb into the fresh cut, and made myself a promise. Simple, brutal, true. If I live, I'm coming for my son. Because hope is risky. It can break you. But without it, I'd die out there for real. I stopped counting days for rescue. I started counting them for one reason only. How long I could survive before my son forgot my voice. The days were hard, but the nights were cruel in a different way. In daylight, you can keep busy. At night, there's nothing to do but listen, to the ocean, to the jungle, to your own head. That's when I started hearing Lucas, not clearly, not like a real voice, more like a memory wearing a mask, a small, broken sound drifting in with the wind. Dad! I shot up so fast my muscles cramped. I ran barefoot to the shoreline, stumbling over rocks, cutting my feet open, not caring. I stood there scanning the black water like I could pull him out of it by force. Nothing, just foam and darkness. That's when the fear finally changed shape. I wasn't scared of dying anymore. I'd already made peace with that possibility. What terrified me was something worse. Lucas growing up thinking I left him, that I didn't fight, that I chose the ocean over him. And then, like a punch right to the gut, my mind replayed Amanda's voice, soft, sweet, confident. Relax, Jack. I've got it. I sank onto the sand and cried without sound. No sobbing, no drama, just tears leaking out of a man who'd run out of places to put the pain. That was the night I understood something terrifying. The island didn't need to kill me. It just needed me to give up first. After that night, my body started slipping. It wasn't one big collapse. It was a slow theft, strength leaving in small amounts, like everything else in my life. I'd stand up and the world would tilt. My hands shook when I tried to crack coconuts. My legs felt like they belonged to someone older. I noticed a cut on my forearm, one I didn't even remember getting, had turned angry and red around the edges. The skin was hot, tight, infected. I tried washing it with seawater like an idiot, then with rainwater when I could catch it. I wrapped it in a strip of fabric and told myself it would be fine because I needed it to be fine. But the fever came anyway. I spent a whole day flat on my back staring at the sky, which looked washed out and empty, like a blank screen. The sun moved, the shadows moved. I didn't. And in that stillness, the darkest thought settled in like it owned me. Amanda doesn't have to kill me. She just has to wait. The island will do it for her. I closed my eyes and whispered into the heat, into the nothing. I'm sorry, Lucas. I'm trying. I'm still trying. And for the first time, I wasn't sure it would be enough. I thought that was the end. But the island had one last test waiting, and it came on a morning that sounded wrong. The fever broke the same way it came, quietly. One morning I sat up and realized my hands weren't shaking as much. My head still felt packed with sand, but I could move. I could think. And on an island, that counts as a miracle. I was limping along the shoreline, scanning for anything useful, when I heard it. Not waves, not wind, wood, groaning. A low, stressed creak, like something heavy arguing with the water. I froze and listened again. There it was, closer now. I climbed onto a rock and saw a small boat drifting sideways toward the reef, getting pulled in like it had no choice. It was going to get ripped apart. I didn't have strength to spare. My shoulders still ached, my stomach was hollow, and the smart move would have been to let it smash and keep my little stash of life to myself. Then I saw a shape inside the boat, a person. I waded out anyway. The water fought me, tugging at my legs, and when I grabbed the bow, my shoulder lit up with pain like a hot wire. The reef scraped the hull. I pulled harder, teeth clenched, vision narrowing. When I got close enough to see her face, my chest tightened. A woman, unconscious, bleeding. I had one thought, cold and simple. Save her, or save myself. And I chose her. Because if there was still another human in my world, I still had a reason. I dragged the boat into shallow water inch by inch, then hauled her onto the sand like she weighed my entire past. Her skin was sunburned and too pale under it. Her lips were cracked. One leg was bent wrong in a way that made my stomach turn. For a second I thought I was too late. I pressed my fingers to her neck, feeling for anything. Nothing. Then, weak, barely there, something fluttered against my fingertips. A pulse. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I let it go. I cracked a coconut with shaking hands, spilled half of it, and got the rest to her lips in tiny sips. She swallowed once, then coughed, hard, wet, alive. That cough hit me like a wave, not because it was loud, because it proved I wasn't the last person on earth. I cleaned the blood from her temple with a damp strip of cloth. I wrapped her leg as carefully as I could, improvising splints from driftwood. I kept talking while I worked, not to comfort her, she couldn't hear me yet, but to keep myself human. "Hey," I murmured, voice rough. "Stay with me. You're not dying here." When her eyes finally flickered open, unfocused, she stared past me like she was trying to remember what safety felt like. And in that moment, I realized something I'd almost forgotten. I was still a decent man. And decency was the first thing Amanda and Brian thought the island would strip away. She came to in pieces. First her eyes, glassy and confused, then her hands, trembling like they didn't trust the world. When she finally found her voice, it scraped out of her throat rough and damaged. "My name is Sarah." It didn't sound like a name. It sounded like someone dragging air through broken glass. I told her mine, told her she was safe, at least as safe as anyone could be on a rock in the middle of nowhere. She tried to sit up and winced so hard her whole face tightened. I pushed her back down gently, like I was handling something fragile I didn't understand. She stared at me for a long moment, measuring me. Then she said something that didn't fit the moment at all. "If we get out..." Her voice cracked. She swallowed and forced it steady. "Don't tell anyone you found me here. Not yet. Promise me." It hit wrong. People who are rescued don't ask for secrecy. They ask for water. They ask for help. "Why?" I asked, and I hated how sharp my voice sounded. Her eyes darted to the tree line like the island itself had ears. "Because if the wrong people find me, they'll finish it." That's when I understood. My life wasn't the only one that had been hunted, and whatever Sarah was running from, it had teeth. People don't ask for secrecy when they're rescued. They ask for help. That's when I knew. Saving Sarah might cost me more than being alone. After that, we fell into a routine because routine is what keeps you alive when nothing makes sense. I fished. She gathered. I went out early, spear in hand, and came back with whatever the ocean would give me. Sarah moved slower, careful with her leg, but she worked, collecting palm fronds, stacking driftwood, setting aside anything dry enough to burn. We made a simple schedule like we were running a tiny, broken household. Water first, fire second, food third. No arguing, no wasted motion. When you're down to basics, pride becomes dead weight. Sarah didn't talk much during the day, saving her voice, I think. But at night, when the fire was small and the wind softened, she'd hum under her breath, barely audible, like she was afraid to wake something up. The first time I heard it, I froze with a piece of fish in my hand. It wasn't a song with words. It was just a line of melody, thin and stubborn, floating in the dark. and it did something to me I wasn't ready for. For the first time in months, the night didn't feel like punishment. It felt shared. We talked in short pieces, safe topics, weather, pain, little memories. I kept Lucas locked behind my teeth because if I let that name out too much, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop. A few nights in, Sarah kept watching me the way you watch a man who's holding something heavy without admitting it. The firelight caught the scar on my hand, one of many, and she nodded toward it. "That from the island?" she asked, voice still rough. I shook my head. "No, that's from before." She waited, didn't push, just gave me space the way people do when they've been broken too. So I told her, not in a neat story, more like dumping a bag of nails on the ground. Amanda, Brian, the bank alerts that disappeared, the restructuring papers, the trip, the storm. The moment I saw my son on another boat and my best friend turned his back like I was a stranger. "And the money," I said, hearing how flat my voice sounded. $500,000, like it was nothing. Sarah's eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp. She didn't give me that pity look people think helps. I swallowed and admitted the part that made my throat burn. I got blindsided. I didn't see it coming. She stared into the fire for a long beat, like she was lining pieces up in her head. Then she said it, quiet, certain, almost cold. "That wasn't an accident." The words landed in my chest exactly where my fear lived, because they sounded like the truth. She didn't say it with sympathy. She said it like someone who'd seen this kind of plan before and survived it. After Sarah said that, my brain stopped looping and started sorting. Pain is noisy, logic is quiet, and in the quiet, details I'd ignored came back with sharp edges. Brian's folder on my kitchen table, Amanda's hand on my shoulders while I signed, the password change for safety, the way she'd been calm when my phone showed a transfer pending, the way she'd pushed that family reset like it was a cure, not a trip. I told Sarah about the documents and she nodded like she'd seen this movie before. "Paper trail," she said. "That's how people get away with it. Not by being strong, by being prepared." She paused, choosing her words. "And custody, that's not always about who's a better parent. Sometimes it's about who tells the first story." That hit me hard because Amanda had been telling stories for months. Soft ones, sweet ones that made me sound tired, stressed, unreliable, like a man one bad day away from snapping. Sarah's eyes stayed on me. "Jack, a storm doesn't steal your son. People do." Something in me shifted then. The grief didn't disappear. It just cooled. And I finally understood the shape of it. I wasn't unlucky. I was used. After that night, the night my pain finally had a shape, things between Sarah and me changed without either of us saying it did. We moved around each other like two people sharing a small, fragile piece. I kept doing what I knew how to do, make things work, water, fire, food. I checked her leg every morning, tightened the wrap, watched her face for that flash of pain she tried to hide. And Sarah took care of me in quieter ways. She'd push a coconut toward me before I remembered I was hungry. She'd hold my gaze when my hands started shaking, like she was reminding me I was still here, still a man, not a ghost. One afternoon, my fingers brushed hers when we traded the coconut shell. Nothing, just skin. But it hit me harder than it should have, not because it was romantic, because it was normal, because it wasn't betrayal. She looked at me like I wasn't a fool, or a victim, or a headline. Just Jack, a man still trying. And I hated how much I needed that. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to let something good in, but trust had already cost me everything once. I remember thinking clear as day, I want to believe. And that's exactly what scares me. Trust didn't feel romantic anymore. It felt like a loaded gun, and I wasn't sure who it was pointed at. A few days later, the horizon changed. It was early, light still soft, ocean still pretending to be calm. I was on the rocks scanning the water the way I always did, more out of habit than hope. And then I saw it. A thin smudge of smoke, far off, rising into the sky like a question mark. My heart didn't leap. It clenched. because hope on this island had a habit of turning into a joke. But the smoke didn't fade. It thickened, and beneath it, tiny, metallic, something moved against the line where sea meets sky. "A ship," I said, and my voice cracked like it didn't know how to be used for good news. Sarah dragged herself up beside me, eyes wide. We didn't talk. We moved. We built a fire like our lives depended on it, because they did. We fed it driftwood, dried leaves, anything that would burn dirty and loud. I waved my shirt until my arm went numb. I screamed until my throat felt raw again, until I tasted blood. Then, slowly, the ship changed course. Sarah started crying, hands over her mouth, like she was afraid to let the sound out. Hope came back so hard it made me shake. And when the first small boat peeled away from the ship and headed toward us, Sarah grabbed my wrist and whispered, terrified, "Jack, please, remember what I said. Don't tell them who I am. Not yet." The rescue crew hit the sand like they'd done this 100 times. Efficient, loud, all business. They checked my vitals, asked questions, tried to get Sarah onto a stretcher. I kept my mouth shut, remembering her whisper, "Don't tell them who I am." I didn't have to. One of the crew members glanced at her face, really looked, and went still. His eyes widened like he'd seen a ghost. "No way," he breathed. Then he said her name out loud, the kind of name you only say when you already know it. Sarah's grip tightened around my hand. Not romantic. Survival. A silent command. Stay with me. Don't leave me to strangers. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just a woman who got lost at sea. This was a woman the world already cared about. A recording artist. The kind with billboards and lawyers and people who answer the phone on the first ring. On the boat, she leaned close, voice barely a scratch. "Jack, the people who tried to erase me," she whispered. "They're connected to the people who hurt you." My stomach dropped. My life didn't feel like a tragedy anymore. It felt like a web. I thought getting rescued meant the nightmare was over. It wasn't. It just changed settings. Back in the States, everything was white lights and paperwork, hospital bracelets, clipboards, questions that came fast and sharp like they were trying to pin me to a story before I could tell my own. A cop stood at the foot of my bed, not rude, worse, polite and suspicious. "Where's your wife? Where's your son? Why were you out there? Do you have a history of instability?" That word hit like a slap. I didn't need them to say Amanda's name. I could feel her fingerprints on every question. She'd written the script while I was starving. She'd made sure the world heard her version first. Online, it was already spinning. Posts, comments, rumor-shaped headlines, missing father, dangerous husband, unstable man. Like I was the threat and she was the brave mother who escaped. And the worst part? I had to swallow every ounce of anger, because if I blew up, even once, I'd prove her point. I wasn't fighting for my pride anymore. I was fighting for one thing, a chance to hear Lucas's voice. And the only way they'd let me was supervised. They called it a supervised call, like I was some kind of risk they had to manage. I sat in a small room that smelled like cheap coffee and disinfectant, staring at a screen while a woman with a clipboard watched my face more than the camera. Then Lucas appeared. My boy looked different. Not in a dramatic way, in the way kids look when they've been carrying adult emotions on small shoulders. His hair was longer. His eyes were cautious, like he wasn't sure where to place me. He didn't smile. He just stared. "Dad, are you okay?" he asked, soft, careful, like he was checking if I was real. My throat closed up so fast I couldn't answer for a second. 1,000 things tried to come out. Your mom lied. Brian's a snake. I never left you. I fought the ocean for you. But I swallowed all of it, because the quickest way to lose him again was to poison him with my rage. So I did the only thing I could do without hurting him. "Yeah," I said, voice shaking anyway. "I'm okay." Lucas blinked hard like he was holding something back. "Mom said you didn't want to come home. That was the knife." I forced my hands to stay still on the table and whispered, "Hey, look at me. Dad's here. I'm not going anywhere." And the worst pain in my life was this. My son still wasn't sure if he could believe it. When the call ended, I walked out like a man trying not to shatter in public. My jaw hurt from clenching. My hands kept curling into fists on their own. I could feel the old, stupid urge rising, the one that says drive to her house, kick the door in, demand your life back. Sarah found me in the hallway outside, leaning against a wall like my bones had turned to sand. She didn't ask how it went. She saw it in my face. "Don't explode," she said. Her voice was still rough, but her eyes were clear. "If you explode, she wins." I laughed once, sharp, bitter. "So what do I do? Smile while she steals my kid?" Sarah stepped closer. "You stay calm. You get precise." She paused. "You follow the money." That phrase hit different coming from her. Like it wasn't a slogan, it was a weapon. She told me she had people, real people, attorneys who handle crisis, fraud, custody, people who don't get scared by tears or lies. I wanted to say I didn't trust anyone, not after Amanda, not after Brian. But then I pictured Lucas's face on that screen, uncertain, afraid. So I made a choice that felt like swallowing fire. I traded rage for accuracy. "Okay," I said, "show me how to do it right." Sarah's lawyer didn't talk like a TV attorney. No speeches, no threats, just questions and checklists, like he was building a machine. He filed what needed filing, got what needed signed, and then the real work started, pulling statements, transaction logs, loan documents, the boring stuff, the stuff liars hate. When the first stack of records hit the table, I felt my stomach tighten. It was my life in numbers, dates, amounts, notes like transfer and adjustment that sounded harmless until you saw how often they happened. Amanda hadn't taken the money in one dramatic swipe. She'd moved it, quietly, repeatedly, like draining blood with a needle, small transfers into a side account I'd never heard of. Then bigger ones routed through another bank. Then a loan opened in my name, my signature verified, my consent assumed. I stared at my own name on those pages and felt my hands start to shake. Not fear, rage, the kind that makes you want to break something just to prove you're still here. The lawyer tapped a line with his pen and said, "Calm as weather. This is good." I looked up. "Good?" He nodded. "Because bank records don't lie." And for the first time since the storm, I felt the ground shift under her feet, not mine. Amanda thought emotion would win her this fight. She forgot one thing. Numbers don't feel sorry for anyone. Once you start seeing the pattern, you can't unsee it. The transfers weren't random. They had a rhythm: move, split, reroute, disappear. The lawyer followed one thread to an account with a business name that meant nothing to me. Clean, generic, forgettable. The kind of name built to hide behind. Then we pulled the registration. The listed representative hit me like a punch. Brian Walsh, my best friend. The guy who'd looked me in the eye during the storm and turned away. I sat there staring at his name in black ink, feeling something go quiet inside me. Anger didn't spike this time. It settled, heavy, cold, organized. Because this wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just my wife making a selfish choice. Brian had structure around it, paperwork, corporate filings, a place for the money to land. He wasn't the guy who got involved. He was the guy who ran it. I flashed back to my kitchen table, the folder, the pen in my hand, Brian nodding like a brother. I heard his voice. "Restructuring, protecting you." Protecting me. Yeah. I looked at the lawyer and said the only thing that mattered now. I'm not calling him. I'm not texting him. I'm not asking why. My voice came out steady, almost calm. We do this in court. Because my best friend didn't just betray me, he put his name on my life. Brian didn't just betray me, he built a system around it. And systems leave records. Once Brian's name showed up on the paper trail, the case stopped being messy marriage and became something sharper. My attorney sent the subpoenas. The dates got set, and Amanda for the first time couldn't dodge with a smile. The deposition room wasn't dramatic, beige walls, a court reporter tapping away like a metronome. Amanda walked in looking small on purpose, soft sweater, tired eyes, the same concerned mom mask she'd been wearing online. She sat down like she was the one who'd been harmed. Then the oath came. Simple words, heavy weight. My lawyer didn't start with accusations. He started with locks. One clean question at a time. Account numbers, dates, who changed passwords, who had access, who suggested the restructuring. Amanda answered smoothly at first, like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. But rehearsed stories crack when you can't control the pace. She said she didn't remember. Then she remembered too much. She said she never touched my phone, then explained a notification only someone holding my phone would see. She said Brian was just helping, then couldn't explain why his company received money. I didn't speak. I just watched her, unblinking. Because under oath, the truth doesn't explode. It fractures. After the deposition, I expected more stalling, more excuses, more poor Amanda theater. Instead, my lawyer walked in with one document and a look I'd never seen on his face, almost satisfied. He slid it across the table to me first. A form dated weeks before our family reset. Not the day of the trip. Not after the storm. Before. Clean timestamp. Clean signature. Amanda's signature. It wasn't one of those papers Brian told me were routine. This was different. Beneficiary changes, authorizations, power of attorney language dressed up in polite fonts. The kind of paperwork that doesn't happen by accident. The kind you prepare when you're planning for someone to be out of the way. In court, my lawyer introduced it like it was nothing, just another exhibit. The judge leaned forward, read the date, then looked up at Amanda with a face that went from neutral to something colder. Amanda started to answer, then stopped. That half-second of silence was too long, not confusion, calculation. And in that gap, the whole room understood the same thing I did. This wasn't bad luck. This was a plan. And if it was a plan, then Brian wasn't just the affair. He was the architect. After that document hit the courtroom, Amanda's side got quieter. Not calmer, quieter, like people do when they realize the room is listening now. The story she'd built online, unstable husband, brave mother, started to sound thin. Sarah didn't celebrate. She didn't post a tearful video. No rant, no hashtags, no messy public war. She did something smarter. One short statement through her publicist. That was it. I am cooperating with authorities regarding financial fraud. No names, no accusations. Just a clean sentence with sharp edges. But everyone understood what it meant. Someone with money and reach had just pointed a flashlight into the dark. I watched it happen in real time. Amanda's lawyer called her. Amanda called someone else. And somewhere across town, Brian Walsh started moving like a man who smelled fire. The accounts that had been sitting quiet suddenly spiked. Transfers. Withdrawals. Corrections. A rushed attempt to wipe fingerprints off glass. It would have been impressive if it wasn't so obvious. Because guilty people don't fear silence. They fear light. And Sarah had just flipped the switch. Brian's first mistake was speed. He didn't drain one account. He hit several. Fast, sloppy, like a man grabbing whatever he can carry before the door gets kicked in. The shell company accounts started trembling, money bouncing through them in ugly bursts, like he was trying to confuse the trail by making it loud. But loud trails are still trails. My lawyer moved just as fast. Emergency filings, motions to freeze assets, requests to preserve records. The kind of legal steps that don't feel like revenge until you watch them land. Then we got the call. Brian booked a flight, my attorney said, voice flat. One way. I pictured Brian packing a bag with that same calm face he wore when he sat at my kitchen table. I pictured him telling himself he'd outsmarted everyone again. But airports don't care about confidence. By the time he reached the terminal, the net was already tightening. When money starts moving like that, when the numbers start screaming, other people start paying attention. People with badges. People who don't handle it like divorce drama. And that's the moment it hit me, cold and clean. He wasn't leaving because he was innocent. He was leaving because he knew. He ran. And that was his confession. People don't run when they're innocent. They run when the math catches up. By the time we were back in court, Amanda had switched tactics. She walked in with red eyes and a trembling voice like she'd been practicing in the mirror. She talked about fear, about abuse, about me being unstable. She said it slow, careful, letting the words hang in the air like smoke. For a second, I could feel the room lean toward her. People want a clean story, a villain, a hero. My attorney didn't argue with her feelings. He went straight for facts. Dates, times, account numbers. An account. Which device changed the password? Who authorized this transfer? Why did money move into this business account? Simple questions. Hard edges. Amanda answered sideways. I don't recall. That's not what happened. Brian handled that. Then she'd circle back and say she didn't really know what Brian did. That's when the evidence came out. Messages, transfers, confirmations. A neat little timeline that didn't care about tears. Amanda's face tightened as her own words appeared on paper. She'd painted me as the bad guy, but the paperwork betrayed her. And I watched the judge's expression change, like a door quietly closing behind her. The next step wasn't about money anymore. It was about Lucas. The court ordered a custody review, and a child specialist got involved, someone trained to spot what parents do to kids when they're trying to win. I hated that my son even needed that kind of protection, but I also knew Amanda had been poisoning the well for months. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. No speeches, no drama. I didn't even look at Amanda. I'm Lucas's father, I said. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to be in my son's life. My voice wanted to shake. I didn't let it. The specialist talked next, about fear responses, about coached language, about a kid repeating adult lines like they're his own. She used a term I'd heard only in late-night research, parental alienation. Amanda's lawyer tried to fight it, but the more they pushed, the uglier it sounded. Then the judge made a decision that cracked something open in my chest. Expanded contact. More time. A temporary adjustment that finally gave me room to reach my son. And in that moment, I realized the truth about my revenge. I didn't need to destroy Amanda. I needed my kid. And for the first time since the storm, I could breathe, because the tide was turning. After the custody shift, the case stopped feeling like a fight and started feeling like gravity. Things that had been floating on lies began to drop. Hard. Brian got flagged at the airport before his one-way flight could turn into a clean escape. Not a dramatic tackle, just a quiet stop, a polite request to step aside, and the look on his face when he realized the room had changed. Then the shell companies started collapsing. One account led to another. Consulting fees. Vendor payments. Clean labels hiding dirty intent. The investigators didn't need my emotions. They needed the math. And the math was loud. Amanda's accounts got frozen. Not temporarily inconvenienced. Frozen. Cards declined. Transfers blocked. Lawyers suddenly charging by the hour instead of smiling for free. The same woman who once told me, "Relax, I've got it," was now asking questions she couldn't control. People expected me to gloat, to finally throw words like punches. I didn't. I just sat there and watched the truth do what it does when it's documented. It spreads. That's the cleanest revenge, when they fall apart in front of the law and all you have to say is nothing. And then my lawyer called and said, "Jack, you can see Lucas in person." The meeting wasn't in my living room. It wasn't warm. It was another supervised space with neutral walls, a box of tissues on the table like they expected a breakdown. Maybe they were right. Lucas walked in slow, like he didn't trust the floor to hold. He looked at me the way he'd looked through the screen, careful, unsure, almost apologizing for wanting me. I didn't rush him. I didn't want to scare him with my need. I knelt down, opened my arms, and kept my voice steady. "Hey, buddy, it's me." He took one step, then stopped, like he was bracing for someone to pull him back. Then he crossed the room fast and hit my chest with his whole body. His arms locked around my neck so tight I could barely breathe, and I didn't care. I held him like I'd been holding my breath for 6 months. He shook against me. "Mom said you didn't want me," he whispered. That sentence could have made me hate her all over again. Instead, I kissed his hair and said the only thing that mattered. That was a lie. I'm not going anywhere. And for the first time, Lucas believed me. Across the room, Sarah watched quietly, like she understood that this was the real victory, not the money, not the headlines. After Lucas came back into my arms, people expected everything to feel fixed, like winning custody time and exposing the fraud meant the damage would rewind. It doesn't work like that. You don't unlive an island. You don't unhear your kid's voice swallowed by a storm. Sarah had her own leftovers too. Her voice never fully returned. She could talk, sure, but singing the way she used to, touring night after night, was gone. I watched her accept that loss with a kind of quiet strength that made me respect her more than any spotlight ever could. She wrote instead, late nights at a keyboard, soft takes in a studio, a slower life built on what she still had. And I learned how to trust again in small pieces. Not grand vows, just consistency. Sarah showing up, Lucas laughing in the back seat. Mornings that didn't feel like traps. Still, rain could catch me off guard. A hard downpour on a roof, and my chest would tighten before my brain could explain why. Sarah would notice and slide her hand into mine, steady as a heartbeat. Let's reclaim it, she'd say. And I realized something true. Love doesn't erase pain, but it gives you the courage to live with it. The idea sounded crazy the first time Sarah said it. A seafood place, she told me, like she was offering a simple dinner plan. I almost laughed. I couldn't even smell fish without being back on that beach. Salt on my lips, smoke in my hair, my stomach empty and angry. That's exactly why, she said. So we built it. Beverly Hills, of all places, where people pay for ambiance as much as food. We called it Jack's Seafood Shack, not because it was cute, but because putting my name on something again felt like taking my life back. A clean name. A real one. Sarah insisted on one detail I didn't understand until I saw it finished. A small lagoon feature in the center of the dining room. Soft blue light. Water moving gently. A piece of the island. Turned safe. Opening night, Lucas sat in a booth swinging his legs, grinning like this was normal life. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. Then I took a bite of grilled fish. No gag. No flashback. Just food. And it hit me, right there, quiet and powerful. I turned the thing that almost killed me into the thing that fed us. If you strip my whole story down to basics, it comes down to three things every man understands. On that island, it was survival. Water, fire, food, nothing else mattered. Pride didn't keep me alive. Routine did. Stubbornness did. Back home, it was love. Not the kind people post online, but the kind that shows up in a supervised room and says, "Dad, are you okay?" Love is Lucas running into my arms even when he wasn't sure I was real. And in court, it was dignity, my name, my life, the part of me Amanda tried to bury under a story. I didn't win it back by swinging first. I won it back by doing the quiet thing, follow the money, let the facts talk, bank records, timelines, oath. I still flinch when rain hits hard. I still remember Brian's eyes in that storm and the way he turned away, but it doesn't control me anymore. Because clean revenge isn't loud, it's final. If you've ever been blindsided by the people closest to you, drop a comment. Tell me what you'd do. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe and stay with me.